Welcome to the Southwest Florida Online News Podcast, hosted by Angelina Asante.
Hi, this is Angelina Asante. Welcome to this episode of Southwest Florida Online News. Today we have an attorney from Burandt, Adamski, Feichthaler, and Sanchez. Did I say that correctly?
You did, Angelina. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks. So my first and most important question, are you billing me for this phone call?
Not today, no.
Well, thank God. Okay, good. Actually, now this is my estate attorney. He prepared my estate and my trust. Thank you so much for doing that, because we got referred to you by a relative who, I guess your business is probably a lot of referrals. Someone referred him to you, and my husband met with you and said, this guy's fantastic. You'll really like him. And he's told me so many things about trust that I never knew. We had prepared a will, so we thought we were in the clear. Well, we have a will. We're not worried about it. And then after my husband met with you, he said, we need a trust. So why do Floridians need a trust?
Well, first of all, that's very kind of you, Angelina. Most of our clients do come to us from other existing clients, their neighbors, their family, their friends. And that question is a really common question. My job really, first and foremost, is to be an educator. So dispelling some of those misconceptions is huge. Why do people need trusts? Why do people need wills? Well, most people want to create a plan that says, when I'm gone, these are how my assets are going to be distributed, whether it's to spouses or kids or other relatives, charities, things like that. Controlling the final outcome is what a lot of people want to do. I mean, there's a lot of books and laws that state the default outcome. And sometimes that's okay, but I don't know about you. I like to control it. Mm-hmm. Wills are the historical, traditional document used to transfer assets. When I die, do the following. And a will reads even like an instruction manual. That instruction manual, though, is something that in Florida goes to the judge. So when you pass away, your will gets recorded. The judge then opens a probate case, and that's where the transfer of assets slowly starts occurring. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with probate technically. It's just very inconvenient for the family members or the heirs. It's a very long process, time-consuming, but also expensive. I don't know if it's necessary in most cases. We like to try to avoid it if possible. That's where other estate planning tools like a trust come into play. There's a big toolbox, though, that estate planning attorneys have. A trust is one of them. It's not the only tool at our disposal. And the phrase trust is very broad. It's like saying, fruits or vegetables. So there's a lot of subcategories to that. But generally speaking, most clients try to avoid court if possible. It makes a lot of sense. A trust is a great vehicle to do that. But a trust gives a lot of other advantages to people. It allows you to control things a little differently than you'd see in a will. I have, for example, 2 young children, a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old. If I suddenly passed away, my wife and I would not want a young child or even a young adult, for that matter, to receive all the inheritance at once. So a trust for me, temporarily, is a great vehicle to say, wait a second, let's put someone else in charge of the funds. Let's let them care for my kids. Let them receive inheritances, perhaps little by little, or upon reaching certain ages. That control aspect is huge. And a trust allows you to do that.
So I know I had spoken with you in person about this, but a friend of mine, her aunt had passed away without a will in Florida, and she got money from Hurricane Ian. And then the survivors were arguing over the insurance money, but it was really set in her account to rebuild the house. So I know I had talked to you about it, and you said you have so many families who are broken up because people don't have their affairs in order before they pass on.
Absolutely. I mean, that insurance check, for example, you'd have to first open up court just to have access to be able to deposit the funds. Then once you deposit the funds, the question is, who are the heirs? In that situation where the aunt passed away, was there a spouse? Were there children? Were there estranged children that kind of make their way back into the picture? Are there nieces and nephews arguing? Are there other situations going on that we may not be aware of? There's a lot of variables that you just want to be able to control it and avoid the headaches and the stress caused. I mean, Can you imagine your insurance check sitting in a bank or frozen for months upon months upon months as you wait to see what the judge finally accomplishes through the probate procedure? I mean, it's an unnecessary step in most situations. Why go through it?
And so many people, their families are torn apart over these circumstances. It's really a sad thing when it can be prevented. Now, I do have a question. Wills are contestable. Is that true or false?
You can contest anything. Do you have grounds to contest is another question. Generally, there's two forms of attack of a document. It's either that the creator, what we call the testator in a will, whether they had competency, did they know what they were doing? Was there undue influences by outside parties? Now, that same attack can be used on a trust, but generally, when you create a trust, you're meeting with an estate planning attorney, you're having, numerous discussions with them. There's a lot of analysis that an attorney is going to do to make sure that the person making the wish knows what they're doing. They're not being subject to influences from outside parties. So there's a lot more protection there in the sense that it's done through a professional, not just a Google document or a homemade will or a piece of, napkin, which Lord knows I've seen those too. Do they count? Sometimes. Do you want to rely on that? Probably not.
I'm just laughing because I watched an episode of the show, The Middle. I don't know if you ever saw that. As a parent, you'd probably find that show really funny and you'd identify with a lot of it. But they would call it the death napkin. They had a napkin where the parents wrote. That's really funny. I didn't know that people really do that.
You'd be surprised. I mean, I've gotten calls from, the hospital bed for 90-year-olds, and their first question is, I've never done anything. I'm like, wait a second, you're 90 and you've never thought about this? Holy cow. I mean, we joke about it now, but it's a topic that a lot of people don't want to address. I mean, it's talking about your own demise, passing. So that's obviously a tough topic. And everyone brushes it off. I'll get to it next year. I've had clients that go, Alvaro, I'm so relieved. I've been wanting to do this for decades. And I'm like, decades? This took us like an hour to put together. We've met a couple times. I made you the document. Boom, you're done. And they go, yeah, I know. It's a huge weight off my shoulders. I'm like, wow, I'm glad I could help. But it doesn't need to be that, that's, big. It doesn't need to feel so much pressure on you. And if you can control it and then make things efficient for your kids, your family, your heirs, that's a no-brainer. It's a win-win. But a trust is a great vehicle. I know that's kind of what we're talking about today, to avoid the court process. For my family, control the young children. But for other families, you might have an heir that is maybe getting sued or has been sued, going through a divorce. Maybe they're not great with money. Maybe they've got drug, alcohol, gambling problems that they have to deal with. Maybe you don't want to just leave them a lump sum all at once. A trust and just a little bit of creative planning can avoid a lot of those impacts, unintended impacts of receiving an inheritance, but also the topics that you were kind of touching on, the family disputes. Certainty, clarity avoids arguments. And if you can avoid arguments, you leave what you probably wanted to and saw the most value in, the family unit. I mean, can you imagine leaving someone an inheritance, big or small as it may be, but if that inheritance causes the family to tear themselves apart, what good did you do? You might as well just, taking it all with you, or donate it all to charity. Because if you tear apart the family, and that's what we worked our entire lives to promote and to keep going, to pass away and tear it up, it's unnecessary. So some good planning avoids that sometimes, which is great.
Yeah, as you're saying that, we try to love our families while we're alive. But if you really love them, this is a really important part of your life to make sure that the family's intact when you're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. You can protect them. You can make it smooth for them. I mean, they're going to be going through a loss. You're gone, but don't leave it to where it's tearing up of a family or a headache of a process or a logistical issue like, oh, the check is stuck in limbo. I can't get access to it. I can't sell the property. I can't manage the business. So there's a lot of benefits to that. And, sometimes I hear that, statements like, oh, but I'm not a millionaire. I don't need this. I tell them, wait a second. Do you own a home? Do you have kids? Do you have an heir? Well, you got to go through probate, even if you have just a single family house. Avoid that. Use the tools that we have at our disposal. A trust is one. There are a variety of others. But once we understand what you're trying to achieve, the mission, who are your heirs, what are you wanting to do, then we can pull out the right tool for you and avoid that headache and create a smooth transition. So, no, you don't need to be a multimillionaire. You just need to have an asset and have an heir. Let's make it smooth.
So then I have a question for you. These snowbirds in the winter, unfortunately, a lot of them are older. They come down here and sometimes they don't make it back to their home state at the end of the season. So for a snowbird who has a will in another state, what does that mean for them when they're a part-time resident? Say they pass away here, do they need to have something here covering them?
So I get that question a lot. They come down, the first thing they say is, well, I have an old will. It doesn't count here. I hear it doesn't apply. Won't work. That's not true. There are wills done out of state that we can use down here. Just because you moved across state lines doesn't nullify the validity of the original document. You might just not want to rely on that original document. It might be a will, which is inefficient in Florida. So you might want to skip court. That might be the primary reason to update. But you don't necessarily need to. You might want to because of a change in circumstances. I want to add grandkids to the will. I want to change my representative. Maybe the person I had listed is now not so close to me. They're not the boots on the ground. They're not near me. Or maybe they're just not that trusted confidant they once were. There might be a variety of other reasons to update your estate planning documents, but the move necessarily doesn't need to change it. You might want to change it for efficiency and updating. But again, you can move. You can bring your documents with you. You just might want to talk to a professional to update them.
Well, I want to tell our listeners one thing, and that is I talked to one of your other attorneys in your office who helped me through a trademark issue, and I was very grateful to work with the local attorney because I used somebody on TV with the flashy ads, and they never finished the process, and I paid more money, and it was a big headache. So going to a local attorney is something really important that I want to tell people. Go to a local attorney. But what other practices do you do besides trusts? Because I was surprised that you had somebody that covered what I needed.
Well, we try to be a full service law firm for our residents here in the area. We're the first law firm in Cape Coral since 1974. And as time has gone by and the firm has grown, and the needs of our clients have grown, we've kind of expanded what we do. So we've got attorneys for a lot of different topic areas. I do primarily the estates, the wills, trusts, probate, but we have attorneys for real estate transactions, businesses, the buying and selling, the management of the contracts, things like that, family law, like you experienced, intellectual property and trademark, copyright. But we also have it for criminal law, government relations. We've got ex-mayors in the firm. We've got police officers who have turned into attorneys. We've got people for almost everything. I don't want to say everything, but if you come across something that we aren't able to help you with, the good thing is we've got a lot of relationships with other law firms throughout the area that we can kind of direct you to. So we'll point you in the right direction as a worst case scenario.
So if someone wants to get a hold of you, can you tell us where to reach you?
Sure. Well, you can always call us. Our number is 239-542-4733. And if you want to pull us up on the internet, we've got our website. It's capecoralattorney.com. My email address is alvaro@capecoralattorney.com. That's ALVARO.
Okay, now I have a surprise question for you. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
What is your favorite movie about attorneys?
Oh, man, there's so many good ones, and they're actually really, really accurate. The Lincoln Lawyer is pretty good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's neat. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, there's a lot. All the John Grisham novels are obviously really, really good. And you know what? They do a pretty good job introducing some real concepts in there. It's not all, fiction and make-believe. So it's pretty good.
Wow, that was great. Thank you so much, Alvaro Sanchez. And thanks for being on here today. I really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. Anytime.
This is Angelina Asante signing off.
Thanks for listening to Southwest Florida Online News. To learn more about Mr. Sanchez and his law practice, please click the show notes at the bottom of this episode.